Facebook and Google investor Roger McNamee. He's the author of Zucked, Waking Up to the Facebook Catastrophe, and a professor at the University of Michigan Law School and co-host of the Sisters in Law podcast, Barbara McQuade. She's also an MSNBC legal analyst. Welcome to both of you. Good morning. Thank you for being with us. Roger, Facebook says it's doing this to protect privacy. It also says that it's gotten in trouble in the past for allowing researchers to use its information. New York University says they're being punished for these researchers say they're being punished for trying to figure stuff out. What do you make of it?
Facebook's argument is total nonsense. This is a classic Facebook move where they're invoking privacy to prevent any scrutiny of their own behavior. The NYU Ad Observatory is a volunteer program with really good disclosure. People volunteer to put a browser extension on their computers that simply looks to see what kind of ads Facebook shows them. And the whole purpose of this is to see what's going on in political advertising. The program's been going on for several years. It's just that right now there's a new set of things going on that they're tracking. They announced that was happening, so Facebook shut them down. The problem here, Ali, is that Facebook is not transparent. If regulators understood how much illegal behavior was going on, how much COVID disinformation advertising was going on, scam medical cures, how much illegal drugs are being promoted there, and not just on Facebook, on Instagram, and on other platforms like Google and YouTube, they would be appalled. And this is just a classic Facebook move.
Barb, we don't really, we've been talking about this for years, about whether social media needs to be regulated, whether it should be self-regulated, whether it should be a government thing. People like Roger have argued that social media as it stands today, unregulated, is anti-democratic. It works against a democratic society. We haven't really moved anywhere in this discussion of how to regulate it. What's your take on how we should be thinking about it?
Yeah, I think that, the statement we see by Facebook and then the statement we see by NYU are both literally true. The problem is it's that Facebook gets to decide what its own rules are. And so if it doesn't like the way someone is researching it or using it, then they can say you're in violation of our terms of service. And so I think that regulation here is necessary in some fashion. We've allowed these social media giants to regulate themselves. But one proposal has been to create even a modest regulation, which would be a safe harbor for researchers like this NYU project to be able to gather information. So, I think that we need to evolve our thinking of social media companies more as utilities than some hobby we have on the internet. In the same way we regulate water companies and electric companies, they've become such essential services that I think we all need to agree on the ground rules.
Barb, I want to play for you a conversation that I had with Illinois Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi the other day when we were discussing this coup attempt, the idea that the federal government, the president, and the Department of Justice in some cases may have had some role in trying to get states to overturn their elections. Listen to what Congressman Krishnamoorthi had to say to me.
It turns out that this guy, Jeff Clark, was writing or drafting these types of letters to all the 6 states that ended up going for Joe Biden. And I think that, what we see is the beginning of the effort to overturn the election.
Jeffrey Clark, a very senior Justice Department official, was apparently getting ready to send letters to states to tell Republicans in those states or secretaries of state who are running the elections that your election has not been very good, and you should fix your electors. That was as close as we got. We could have come very close to something that you are now prepared to say was a coup.
This letter from Jeffrey Clark, Ellie, is so disturbing. The draft has now become public. It's a detailed letter explaining to states how they can go about overturning the election. This is so far out of the lane of what the Justice Department does, which is ordinarily very deferential to states in their own governing decisions. It sets out all the statutes that are necessary for a state to say, we're going to declare our election failed because of all of this fraud that has been reported. Therefore, it allows us to throw the election to our state legislatures to decide how to select our electors. And those are states controlled by Republican legislators. legislatures. And so the roadmap is to say, let those Republican legislatures choose how those 6 states decide the election. And those 6 states would be enough to throw the election to Donald Trump. It is an incredibly alarming letter, and I think there needs to be accountability for it.
Roger, earlier I was talking to the former Congressman Joe Walsh, and he had tweeted the other day, he said, a conversation I've had tens of thousands of times in the past few years, he, meaning Joe, says, I oppose Trump because he acts like he's above the law. He uses his office to try and silence dissent. He's an authoritarian. Trump voters say, I don't care if he's an authoritarian because he's fighting for me. We have gotten to this point that there are some Americans who are quite prepared to overlook stuff like this letter from Jeffrey Clark, or the fact that Donald Trump tried to get the acting attorney general to intervene in the election.
So, Ali, I think one of the core issues here, if we think about how internet platforms work in our lives, they are themselves authoritarian. And they have been an essential tool for Trump and his minions to undermine democracy and now attempt this coup. Without Facebook, without Instagram, without Google and YouTube, none of that would have been possible. And the challenge that we face is that the country for 40 years has deregulated business to the point where businesses like Facebook are governments themselves. They make the choices, as Barbara said, they make the choices that rule our lives. And we have to decide as a country, do we want to be ruled by a handful of very large corporations and potentially a dictator, or would we like to be a democracy where we, the people, are in charge?
Barbara, Roger, don't go anywhere. We're going to continue this conversation after a quick break. More Velshi right after this.